Your Honor, I did have a motion that I wanted to file, a motion to eliminate for late received discovery related to the maps that we discussed yesterday.
Okay.
I provided a copy for the email, but I do also need to follow them.
Okay. That's what we discussed.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Judge, you just
Oh, okay. We discussed that as a sense, right?
Yes, Your
No, I really don't know
Your Honor, I believe that the bench was represented that we had received the maps previously, and I wanted to document that he had searched and he had not received them previously, and I think that given the timeliness of the disclosure, they should be excluded.
Okay.
Do you want me to show you what I have? Do you want me to respond? As I had stated on the record yesterday, there's a couple of different versions of this same map that was produced. In the information container and the cell phone records, the certified records that were produced in discovery from the beginning. The initial map that they have, talked about from grand jury, which listed where the cell tower was and where the phone calls made were hitting off the particular towers leading up to both the Austin City location and the Quality Inn location. The final map is the same information, just in a different version or just different format. So it still contains the cell tower location as well as the times of the phone calls. All of that information is still coming from those particular certified cell phone records. I know the defense also took issue with respect to a high shape that was located on a cell tower. And as indicated, that only shows the direction of where the call came from on one of those points of the tower, also contained in the cell phone records. And the witnesses who will testify will make it very clear that they cannot indicate where the footprint of that is. They'll explain what that means, and we'll talk about in general, what a footprint means, but we cannot say what the footprint is per tower. And so that will be made very clear from those maps. And so I do not believe that there was any additional information that was not provided. So while the only thing that was happening was the format of that map was being tweaked, but no information was changed.
Okay. All right. The motion is noted and the objection is noted, but so we'll proceed.
Jury present.
All right, the jury is present. Comments, let's call.
Yes, Your Honor.
Everyone may be seated. Come up and call your next witness.
Detective Tim Upchurch.
Detective Upchurch. You swear or affirm the testimony you give here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
Go ahead and sit down, please. Okay, you may ask.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning.
Good morning.
Will you please state your name
Timothy Upchurch,
and where are you employed?
Lexington Police Department.
How long have you been with the police department?
I've been with the police department since June of 2002, so 16 years.
What unit are you currently assigned to?
I am currently assigned to the robbery homicide unit.
Were you in that unit in 2014?
Yes, I was.
And how long have you been in that unit?
I've been in that unit for 7 years.
What do you do in that unit?
In that unit, we are in charge of investigating homicides, death investigations. We also are in charge of investigating robberies, to include personal robberies and commercial robberies. We also investigate serious assaults, as well as harassing communications reports and terrorist threatening reports.
How many detectives generally are in that unit?
At that particular time, we had 10 detectives in the unit.
And are all of you assigned to work robberies and homicides, or were you split up at some point?
Yes, all of us were being assigned robbery and homicide cases, except for one detective who was, at that particular time in 2014, was a cold case detective.
Okay. And so at that time, I guess your unit of 10 investigated all those crimes that you said, the robberies, the homicides, the serious assaults, all those types of things.
Yes, we did.
In June of 2014, were you assigned a report regarding a robbery that occurred at Quality Inn?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask this question. When there's I guess generally when there's a robbery or a crime like that has occurred, and someone calls 911, does that 911 call go to you, or does it go to you in general, your unit, or does it go to someone else?
It goes to someone else.
And who generally is that someone else?
The 911 call goes to the dispatch center, at which point they dispatch officers assigned to that beat or that sector to the location of where the crime occurred.
And that would be a patrol officer?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so then if there's a patrol officer that goes out, why are you, your unit, members of your unit assigned to investigate?
Well, initially, the officers will go out, they will talk to the victims, obtain information from the victims about the crime. They will report that. They do the initial investigation at that particular time. Then the report is assigned to me, and my job is to look at what they obtained, look to see if there's other light crimes in the area. I'm assigned a particular area, so I look at light crime to see if there's any other robberies that may have matched that one, and see if we can develop potential suspects in cases.
And so why does a member of your unit do that as opposed to a patrol officer?
The patrol officer goes, they work 4 days a week, typically 10-hour shifts. Their job is to work a small area of town. They go from call to call. So, you know, in a particular shift, an officer on patrol will take several calls for service. And whereas in several calls for service during their shift, and they'll take several reports during their shift.
And so when a member of your unit is assigned, you all have more time, I guess, and opportunity and ability to do more prolonged investigation as opposed to a patrol officer?
Yes, we do.
Is there a particular way in which members of your unit are assigned robbery or homicides or assault reports?
Yes. We were assigned robberies based on which sector we were assigned to in the investigative unit. So we have, in Lexington, we have 3 different sectors. We have East Sector, West Sector, and Central Sector. And then at that time, we had 3 detectives assigned to each sector. So I was assigned to West Sector. So all the robbery reports in West Sector, I would receive in addition to 2 other detectives. Now, when it came to homicides, we were in a rotation for homicides. We had 9 detectives that investigated active homicides. So essentially, when a homicide occurred, whichever detective got that homicide, he wouldn't get another homicide until 9 later. And then assaults, terrorist threatenings, harassing communications, missing persons, and things like that were assigned. And they just tried to keep everybody evenly assigned cases.
And when you all work on cases, do you all work on them independently, or do you all sometimes work kind of as a team?
We work as a team in that unit. We do a really good job of working as a team to solve crimes, and we talk a lot about different cases in an attempt to keep the people of Fayette County safe.
And so one particular person may be assigned a robbery or a homicide or something like that, but will get assistance from other members of the unit on that with you.
Yes.
This particular report regarding the robbery at Quality Inn, do you remember when you were assigned that?
Yes, I did.
And when were you assigned that?
I was assigned that report on June 16th.
And when you get assigned, generally, what happens? How are you notified that you're assigned?
I received an email from my sergeant that this particular case has been assigned to me. Once I received that email, I then logged the case in a spreadsheet that I keep up with to keep a running tab of all the cases that I have.
And then what did you do when you got assigned that report?
Once I was assigned the report, I made initial contact with the victim on the victims on the 17th. I made contact with Mr. Hansford, and once I made contact with him, I knew that through the report that the officer had made that credit cards were stolen, a gun was stolen, that there was no serial number provided at the time, and the description that they gave. With my conversation with Mr. Hansford, I learned that he was dating, at that time, one of the other victims, Jessica Hansford, or Jessica Rutherford at the time, and that Mitchell Smith was a good friend of his. So he was a common denominator between all of them. I requested that if there's any more information that they could provide, to let me know. I would provide him with my phone number. I asked him to look for credit card fraud on his credit cards to see if, if someone used his credit card, we might be able to locate any evidence of that. And I asked him to locate the paperwork on his firearm. That way we could enter that into a national database, the way it became stolen, or if it showed up in another agency, or it was pawned in a pawn shop, then we would be able to locate that particular firearm.
And at some point, was he able to give you the serial number of that firearm?
Yes, yes.
And what was the serial number that you received?
The serial number that Mr. Hansford provided to me to the Springfield XDS 45 caliber handgun was X as in X-ray, Sam as in Sam, or S as in Sam, 696718.
And at that point on the 17th, was Mr. Hansford the only one that you spoke with?
Yes.
And at the time that you spoke with him, did you have the police report that was done by Officer Harris,
I did.
the initial responding officer?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And so you were able to have that report and the information that was provided in that as well?
Yes.
What did you do after the 17th?
Well, I went on vacation, left on the 18th, I returned on the 22nd of June, and then I left again on the day of the 24th and returned on the 30th of June.
And then what did you do when you returned from vacation?
When I returned back, I hadn't heard anything from Mr. Hansford about the serial number to his firearm. I then recontacted him and asked him if he was able to locate that serial number, which he did. And then it was ultimately entered into the national database.
Okay. And what day was that when you talked with him and got that number? What day was that?
That was June the 30th, 2014.
And then what happened after that?
Before we started looking into, during that time, we had the homicide that involved the victim, Jonathan Price. Through that investigation, we learned that a Springfield 45 XVS was the weapon that was ultimately used in that homicide. Detectives in the unit started querying the reports that we had prior to that to see if we had any light crimes involving a firearm such as that, and or a firearm that was stolen and that would have matched the description of that. That's when we learned that my victims in the Quality Inn robbery had a Springfield XDS 45 caliber stolen that we believe could possibly be involved in the homicide.
On the Austin City homicide, were you assigned that homicide?
No, I wasn't.
And who was assigned as the lead of that?
Detective Franz Wolf was assigned the lead on that homicide.
All right. And you indicated that at some point during that time that you learned that there was a Springfield XDS that would have been involved in that homicide.
Yes.
Okay. Were you involved in that part of that, I guess? When did that information get known?
Well, Detective Wolf took the shell casings from the homicide to KSP. And then ultimately, detectives in the unit received information from KSP that the Springfield was a gun that was involved in the homicide.
Okay. And were you on vacation? I'm trying to figure out the timing of that. Were you on
I did
vacation?
not, I did not learn about that until I got back.
Okay, very good. All right. And so when you got back from there,
Mhm.
were you then kind of put involved in that further investigation?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Did anything happen, I guess, initially with that information? You said they queried it and determined that the Springfield was stolen at the Quality Inn robbery. What occurred at that point?
I know that we started looking at video surveillance, and especially there was a detective looking at video surveillance in the homicide of Mr. Jonathan Price.
At some point, did there become information that Mr. Canada and Mr. Malazan may have been involved in this robbery?
Yes,
Okay. And did you ultimately get a description of these two individuals?
yes,
Did you also, from the initial Quality Inn robbery report,
Mhm.
have a description given by the victims in that case?
yes, I did.
Okay. Based on the descriptions given, and let me ask this question. You said that you reviewed that particular report.
I did.
Did the victims give you, when you spoke with them, any additional information that was not contained in that report?
Not at that time.
Okay. At some point they did?
Yes, I did.
All right. From the initial report, when you were looking to see whether or not their description was similar to the description of the defendants, did you have a height and weight description that was given by them?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What was the height and weight description?
One of the height and weights was 5'8", 180 pounds, with an age of 25 years. Male black.
And what was the other?
I'm sorry?
What was the other?
The other was a male black, approximately 30 years of age.
Okay. And then there was also clothing description that was
Yes,
given?
there was.
All right. What then happened after the information about the Springfield and the information about the defendants and similar description to what victims gave? What happened at that point?
Well, we received the information that in July, around July the 17th, that we received information that Mr. Malazan and Mr. Canada were involved in the homicide of Jonathan Price. When we learned that information, we were able to get descriptions of them, and then looking at my robbery, or the robbery assigned to me where the Springfield XDS was taken, the same descriptions were given in that particular case as well. So we started investigating the defendants in both cases.
Okay. And at some point, were these two put in a photo lineup to be shown to those Quality Inn victims?
Yes, they were.
Okay. So before I go there, let me back up. Also at some point, did you indicate that you all were reviewing video from the homicide from Austin City?
Yes.
Did you also attempt to review video or retrieve video from Quality Inn?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and what did you attempt to find?
Well, we went out to Newtown Court in an attempt to find cameras, video surveillance out there on that particular report. The only video surveillance that we located was at the Shell station, which was next door to the Quality Inn hotel. No other no other video was located on Newtown.
And you say we, who is we?
Well, there were several of us in the investigative unit. We had several people that were reassigned to us to help us during that time. We had a rash of crime during this time period. So we had people up there specifically helping us with going out and getting video and going out and helping with all of the investigation.
Okay. And then, so this team kind of went, and did you go physically out there to Quality Inn?
Yes, I physically went out to Quality Inn to check for video surveillance and to get orient myself with the Quality Inn. At Quality Inn at that time.
And what other locations in that particular area near that hotel did you all look for?
Not including the Shell, there's a Residence Inn, there's a Courtyard Marriott out there that detectives looked into. Kentucky Highway Department was at the end of that court. We looked there as well.
Okay. And did any, other than the Shell, did any of those locations have video camera or
No.
video surveillance?
They did not.
Okay, and then you indicated Shell
Yes.
did have a video camera.
Yes.
And where is the Shell station located in reference to Quality Inn?
It's essentially, once you turn on the Newtown Court, it's essentially right beside Quality Inn. It's the first business on, once you turn on to Newtown Court, front of Newtown, on the right side.
And did you review that Shell video?
Yes, I did.
And was there anybody in that video that matched the description given by the victim?
No, there was not.
Go ahead and do this right now. I'm going to show you some photos that were previously introduced. Start with you indicated that you had gone out to Quality and kind of orient yourself to that particular location. Do you recognize this photo?
I did.
Tell us what that's a photo of.
That's the photo of the Quality Inn located on Newtown Court. In this photo, you can see the pool, which is essentially in front of the White Explorer. The victims that were robbed at this location, this room was behind the pool. It's hard to see the picture, but behind the pool is where the room was at when they were robbed.
Bring your point. How's that?
The room is in this area here.
Okay. And the pool was where?
The pool is here.
All right. And then, where is that location?
This is the office up here. And this is the back of the office. This is the pool again, and this is taken, I believe, from where the victim's room was at.
Okay. And first, when you are coming down, so if you're like on Newtown going outbound, Newtown Pike, and what direction would you turn to get to the Shell station?
If you're outbound Newtown Pike, you would turn right onto Newtown Court just after you pass New Circle.
And so when you first turn right onto Newtown Court, the Shell station is the first thing?
Yes,
And then go past the Shell, and what's the next thing?
the Quality Inn.
All right. And when you first turn into where the Quality Inn is, what's the first location, or what's the first thing you drive into?
You drive into the office here.
Okay, and so from that view right there, I guess on the other side of the office, the other side, okay, you point to the other side of the office where you would come in off of Newtown Court.
You come off of Newtown Court. If you're coming off of Newtown Court into Quality Inn, is that, you would come through here. There's a little awning right here.
Okay.
You come in from over here and drive under the awning.
Okay.
And if you can see this here, this is the Shell station to help you orient yourself with the location.
That orange top building
Yes.
is right there?
Yes.
Okay. So then you would come in that way, and then there's parking lot here, and a parking lot on the other side,
Yes.
there, and then the pool in the middle, and then the victim's room back to here.
Yes.
Okay. And so from this angle, the office would be where?
The office would be pointing up this direction.
Okay. And then, if you remember the room number of the victim?
I do.
And what number was that?
115?
All right, and that's the room right there.
Yes.
And then this photograph.
Yes. This is the room, and this is the
So
pool.
it was 115. Okay, and the pool, and that angle standing where?
If you're standing here, you're looking east. So you're looking away from the office, and I describe it as east, this way.
And you indicated when you went out there that there were no external video cameras at Quality Inn.
Right.
Did they have any cameras?
There was an internal camera that was pointing at the front door from the counter. If someone came in, they could capture someone coming into the Quality Inn, into the actual lobby.
In the lobby of that office that you saw?
Yes.
Inside one of them?
Yes.
Okay. But none right there where the victims were staying?
No, no.
What did you do after attempting to look for video or everything like that? What did you then do?
We put together photographic lineups containing that of containing the defendants. I contacted the victims who lived in Whitney City at the time, and was approximately 2 hours away, to schedule a time that I could come and meet with them about their case. I also requested that, asked if they had any shell casings from the Springfield, if they had shot that gun in the past. Mr. Hansford indicated that he did, and that he would be able to give me some spent shell casings from that particular gun to bring those to our meeting.
Did you, in asking for the casings, indicate to him why you needed those?
No, I did not.
When you asked him about setting up a meeting to look at the lineups, what information did you give him?
I just told them that I wanted to come and show them some photos in reference to their robbery. At no point in time did I tell them that the persons who committed the robbery were in a lineup or in the photos that I was going to present to them. I just told them that I had some photos that I wanted to show them in reference, or lineups that I wanted to show them in reference to their robbery.
Have you put lineups together before?
Yes, I have.
How many lineups would you say that you hired?
I've been assigned to the Detective Bureau since 2010. I was in residential burglary the year before that. So I've been there approximately 8 years. So I would estimate it to be hundreds, in the hundreds.
Do you only put together lineups for yourself?
No, I don't. I assist other detectives. In the past, I've assisted other detectives in putting together lineups, and I've also put a large number together for myself.
And is that part of that team approach that you all
Yes,
say?
it is.
How do you go about putting together a lineup?
The method that I usually use, or that I use in putting together a lineup, I have access to, I can pull photos from. And in this situation, or any situation in which I'm putting together a lineup, I use light characteristics of these, like the defendant would be. I try to use facial hair, weight, clothing, age. That way I'm try to get it as close as possible to the same as the defendants are. The last thing I want to do is have something in there that suggests that the person that we're investigating is that person in the lineup.
So you don't try to do anything that makes one stick out more than the other?
Right. Right.
They show you what was previously marked. Commonwealth 8, 10, 6. And that's what you recognize those documents.
I did.
And what do you recognize those items to be?
These are lineups that were put together in part in the investigation of the quality of robbery presented to the victims of the quality of robbery.
One of the lineups is put in a folder. You think you're missing them? Oh, those are only ones introduced?
Oh,
You're talking about for the other victims?
sorry.
Okay, that's okay. All right, so one of the lineups is in a folder
Yes.
type format,
Yes.
okay? And one of the lineups is in sort of individual functional format.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a difference between the two?
Yes, there is.
Okay, tell us what's the difference.
The one in the folder is what we refer to as a six-pack. The one where we have individual pictures is referred to as a sequential lineup.
Okay. And are both types done by the Leslie Police Department?
Yes.
And are there reasons why you would do one over the other?
Yes, they are.
Okay, like generally what would be a reason?
The orientation in the picture of the one in the folder of the defendant, the orientation of his photo was different than the 5 other photos that I put in it. So in an effort to make them all look the same, I put them in this folder the way they are all the same size. That way I don't, if it was oriented differently, let's say the defendant was oriented differently than the other 5, then that would be suggesting that that's the one you need to take out. And that's the last thing that I want to do is have a victim look at a photo and go, oh, well, this one's different. I need to pick this one out.
Okay. So after you did put them together, and let me ask, did you specifically put these together, or did part of the team do that?
I put together the folder lineup, and part of the team put together the sequential lineup.
Okay. And what happened after the lineups were completed?
After the lineups were completed, we met with the victims in Burnside, Kentucky, to show the lineups.
And tell us when you got there, did someone go with you?
Yes.
Who went with you?
Detective Skinover went with me down to Burnside to meet with the victims.
And is he also a detective in your unit?
Yes, he was.
And when you got down there, were the 3 victims there?
Yes, they were.
And what did you tell them at that point?
Well, we introduced ourselves once we got down there. I told them that I had some photos that I wanted to show them, and that I was going to put one of them in my vehicle one by one, and for them not to speak to each other after they showed the line. After I showed them the line, not to talk about it with one another. And then they were put in my vehicle one at a time and presented lineups.
Do you remember who you showed one first?
I showed Jessica Rutherford the first time.
Okay. And hers is not one of those up there, right?
No, it is not.
Okay. So when you were saying one's missing, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So you showed Jessica, did you show her both lineups?
No, I did not.
And why not?
Jessica indicated to me that during that time that she only got a good look at a subject that had dreadlocks. So I chose. She didn't think she would even, if given the opportunity, would be able to pick out anybody else. So I only showed her the one that contained that of the defendant concealed candidate.
And was she able to pick him or anyone out of that line?
No, she was not.
But prior to, I may just ask this, prior to showing her that lineup, did you read that instruction sheet to her?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
And then, when you're then showing the photos, how do you show them?
When I show the photos, I show them one at a time. I would give them a photo, and then I would take it back to give them another photo.
And do you say anything to them while you're handing them the photos?
No, I don't speak to them at all during this time.
And the same with handing the folder with Melissa, did you say anything?
No, I do not.
After Jessica saw her, I guess, line up, she got out of the car,
She did.
and then you don't recall who was next?
Mr. Hansford was the next victim to get in the car.
Is that Shane Hansford?
Yes,
And then did you also read his photographic lineup?
I did. I read him the instructions to the photographic lineup prior to showing him the photographic lineup.
And you showed him those pictures one at a time?
I did.
And did you say anything to him during that time?
No, I did not.
This one, in the individual one, the sequential one,
Yes.
was he able to pick out Mr. Canada?
No, he was not.
Right? You then showed him the folder,
I did.
right? And you handed that to him as well.
Yes.
Was he able to identify anyone? And this is his personal record?
That's correct.
And who was that person?
That is the defendant Juan Lawson.
After he indicates that, I guess, or points out a particular person, do you have him write something?
I do.
All right, and tell us about that.
Part of the instructions is to let them, if they make a selection, is to have them fill out this part here. And it's, he wrote, or I selected number 5 as the person who robbed me. And then, how certain are you of your identification? He's asked to fill that out as well.
So he does that in his own writing. and everything.
Yes, he does.
After he picks a particular person out, or in this case, Mr. Malazzo, do you then say anything to him about his selection?
No, I do not.
After Mr. Hansford, who did you show the lineup to?
I showed the lineup to Mitchell Smith.
And did you show both of them to him?
Yes, I did.
With respect to Mr. Malazzo and the folder, was he able to pick anybody out?
No, he was not.
Okay. And then with respect to the sequential lineup, was he able to pick anybody out?
Yes, he was.
Okay, and is this the one you showed for him?
Yes,
And the photos that you showed for him?
yes.
And are there numbers listed on the back of there?
Yes, they are.
And what's the point of those numbers?
The point of those numbers is the way the victim can let us know which, if they pick one out, they can refer to the number. And that way we've got them all in order.
And then Mr. Smith picked,
Mr. Smith picks number 2 and number 5.
and who is number 2?
Number 2 is Consenio Canada,
Okay. And who is number 5?
and number 5 is Tone Broaddus.
Okay, his name is Tony Wallace.
Yes.
After you picked those two people out, did you say anything else to him?
No, he did not.
Did you indicate anything about his selection?
No, I did not.
After you showed those two lineups to them, and you indicated you did not in any way tell them who they picked out or anything,
Right.
what did you do?
I got out of the car, we all got out of the car, or everybody was outside the car. Got out of the car and collected the shell casings that Mr. Hansford had provided, that he had brought, that he collected on his own. During that time, I asked them if they had anything else that they could add, anything whatsoever that they could remember about this particular, about their case.
Okay. And did they indicate they had any additional information?
Yes, they did.
What?
They stated that the subject who robbed them that was wearing the ball cap referred to the other subject who had dreadlocks and said, "Come on, nephew."
Prior to this time, had Mr. Malazim or Mr. Canada's face been on the news regarding this robbery?
No, we had not.
We're looking for scissors. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you what I've marked for Commonwealth 11. Excellent. Commonwealth number 11. And ask if you can identify that.
These are the shell casings that Mr. Shane Hansford provided to me in Burnside, Kentucky, that he said that dealt with ones that we fired from his firearm.
Get over that, please. And so when Mr. Hansford, I guess, brought you the shell cases, how did he pack them?
We just had them in a Ziploc bag.
In a Ziploc bag, and you collected those, and what did you do with them when you took them?
I brought them back to Mexican police headquarters and booked them in the property and evidence.
Okay. So explain what booked in to property and evidence means.
When you have evidence of a crime, we book it into a secure location that's located in the police headquarters. There's only a few people that have keys or fobs that are able to get into that particular room. You book it, you put it in an envelope such as this, you describe what the item is, and you seal it with your name and date. And that is entered into the property and evidence room, and they put it in the computer that they have received this item from you. And then if you ever need to check it out, they will put in the chain of custody. So if they get it from you, if you check it back out, they keep up with who's got it, when you got it, and so on and so forth.
And all of these items are kept locked and secure?
Yes, they're locked in a secure location.
Okay. And in this envelope, you indicate that you put in this envelope, mark what it is, and that kind of thing, is 5 Winchester 45 caliber shell casings, is that?
Yes.
Okay. There are multiple places here where there's some red evidence tape. Tell us what that is.
That's when someone else is, another detective and or the Kentucky State Police Lab or someone is taking this and opened it up and resealed it.
And when that happens, when you were talking about when it's checked out, can anybody just walk in and go get it?
No.
Okay. And so there's a process and a procedure in place.
There's a process and a procedure in place to obtain items for property and evidence.
And so these casings here, do you recognize those to be the ones that were contained in this envelope collected from the jail?
Yes.
Thank you.
Same.
They are right now in individual envelopes with this yellow tape on it. What do you recognize that yellow tape?
That's what Kentucky State Police Lab, I believe, was put on, or our lab, our property and evidence was put on, and they got it returned. Now this is from the Kentucky State Police Lab. This is what they put on.
Okay, so when those items are sent to the lab, they put their own sticker on it, on this tape?
Yes. Yes.
Going back then just a moment to the photographic lineups that we showed, the sequential one where you indicated that Mr. Smith had picked out number 2 and number 5.
Yes.
You indicated number 2 is Mr. Canada.
Yes.
Number 5 you indicated was Tone Broadus.
Yes.
Okay. Did you do any follow-up with respect to Mr. Broadus?
I did.
What did you do?
I did some research on Mr. Tone Broadus to see who he was, and I learned that through my investigation, that Mr. Tone Broadus was incarcerated in the Fayette County Detention Center from April 2014 to July 2014, during the time of the robbery of Carter and the homicide of Jonathan Rice.
Okay. So he was in jail from April to when?
April till July.
April to July 2014.
Yes.
So he would not have been present at the quality and all that.
No, he would
On
not.
June 15th. Okay. After showing these victims the lineups on July the 29th and then bringing the shell casings back, did you place charges on the defendants at that point?
No, I did not.
Okay. What additional things happened at that point?
There was more investigation to be done. We sent the shell casings off to Kentucky State Police Lab to see if, in fact, those shell casings matched the shell casings located at the homicide. There was cell phone. We obtained cell phone numbers for both of the defendants. At that particular time, we started looking in. I did search warrants to obtain their cell phone records from the respective businesses that they had their cell phone service through.
What was the phone number of the search warrant? Back up. You indicated that you were getting cell phone records for Mr. Canada's cell phone.
Yes.
Okay. And you got that by way of a search warrant. Is that what you said?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
How did you obtain his cell phone records?
Oh, I obtained his cell phone records through a search warrant that was provided to his cell phone provider.
Okay, so a search warrant signed by a judge given to the cell phone provider.
Yes.
And what is the cell phone provider of Mr. Canada?
Mr. Canada's cell phone provider at that particular time was AT&T.
And do you recall the phone number for the cell records in which you obtained?
Yes, the phone number for Mr. Canada at that time was 859-684-5161.
And then did you indicate that you also obtained cell phone records from Mr. Malazzo?
I did.
Also by way of a search warrant
Yes,
signed by the judge?
also by way of a search warrant signed by a judge.
Okay. And what carrier was that?
His carrier was Sprint, and his phone number at that time was 859-552-7517.
You were talking about some additional investigations that need to be done and the cases that were sent. At some point, did you obtain some additional casings?
Yes, I did.
Tell us about that.
When we originally sent the shell casings off that Mr. Hampton provided to me on July the 29th, one of those shell casings, 4 of the shell casings matched the shell casing from the homicide. And then we had one.
Detective Upchurch, I was asking you about the shell casings. And did you receive information then from the lab after you sent that first 5 off? Did you receive information from the lab regarding those shell casings and how they related to the Austin City shell casings?
Yes.
Okay. And then based on the information that you received, did you then go back to Springfield or back to Somerset to receive some additional shell casings?
Yes, I went to Whitley City to receive additional shell casings.
And who did you receive those shell casings from?
I received those shell casings from Mitchell Smith.
Okay. And did Mitchell Smith also have a .45 weapon?
He did?
And is that the kind of shell casings that you obtained?
Yes, I did.
And what was done with those .45 shell casings?
They were booked into property limits at Lexington Police Headquarters.
And that was on what day?
That was August 29th, 2014.
At that point on August the 29th, had you all recovered the actual gun, the actual Springfield at that point?
No, we had not.
Was it recovered at some point?
Yes, it was.
Do you recall about when that was?
It was recovered approximately September the 4th, 2014.
And after that date, were the casings from Austin City, the casing from Austin City, and the casings, the initial casings you obtained from Mr. Hansford, were those all sent to the lab to be tested against that firearm? I'm not asking the results, but were all of those at some point?
At some point, all the shell casings in the gun were sent to KSP lab.
Okay, to be tested. Okay. You talked about earlier when you were obtaining video from, with respect to the quality in robbery. Did you also assist in obtaining or reviewing video in the Austin City homicide?
I did.
What did you look at or obtain?
I obtained some video. Detective Wolf asked me to meet with Brian Maxwell to obtain some video from the Danny Scott Liquor that was located in the Woodhill Center. I went to Brian Maxwell's business and he provided me with video from that location.
And what did you do with it?
I provided it to Detective Wolf, who was the lead investigator of that case.
And at some point, were these two defendants charged with the robbery, this quality in robbery?
Yes, they were.
Okay, and do you know like how it came to be that they were charged?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and how was that they were charged?
We presented the robbery case to the Fayette County Grand Jury. The Fayette County Grand Jury then handed down an indictment for the defendants in the robbery case. And this was done in September.
September of what year?
2014.
Nothing further.
Detective Upchurch. So, you were assigned this robbery on June 16th of 2014.
Yes.
And June 17th, you made contact with Mr. Hansford.
Yes, I did.
And then you went on vacation for about 2 weeks. You got back June 30th, right? Okay. You had one more contact on June 30th to get the serial number, right?
Yes, I did.
No additional details were provided at that time other than the serial number of the gun.
No, there wasn't.
All right. And then your next contact with Mr. Hansford wasn't until July 29th, so approximately a month later, right?
Yes.
And that was 2 days after your unit had learned that the casing recovered from Austin City was consistent with having been fired from a Springfield XCS 45.
Are you, okay, can you repeat that? Are you saying July 29th, it was 2 days after we learned?
Yes.
Actually, we learned that the shell casing in the Austin City case matched the Springfield XCS around June the 24th, 2014.
So, you indicated that you did visit the scene of the robbery. And that was at the same time that the video from the Shell station was collected?
Yes, we went out there to collect video.
And that was July 28th?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So that was approximately 8 months after your last contact with Mr. Hansford?
Yes, it was.
So you did not visit the scene of the robbery until about a month and a half after the robbery had occurred?
Give or take.
And you did not at any time make any request for forensic testing regarding DNA or fingerprints that may have been recovered from the scene of the quality inn?
There was no DNA or forensics at the scene. We're talking about a hotel room that's a multi-purpose room, you know, a lot of people in and out of that room. That's not something that we would normally do. The officer that responded to that scene would have been trained to locate evidence, and the officer didn't locate any evidence that would require forensic services to come out.
So there was no testing done for DNA or fingerprints?
No, there was not.
Because your view is that there were no DNA or fingerprints? Is that
Well,
what you just said?
yes,
When you did visit the scene, you indicated you collected Shell station surveillance video.
Yes,
on
Shell
July
station.
28th.
that's video, so.
And, okay, so if this is sort of the hotel here, pool, Shell station's over here, right? This is Newtown Court.
Newtown Court,
Right here.
right.
Newtown Court,
Right.
Shell station, office for the hotel.
Work rate. I'm sorry. The way I look at it is Shell Station, then quality. If you're coming off of Newtown, you got the Shell Station first, then quality.
Okay. So I guess the orientation I'm trying to talk about is if I'm standing at room 115 facing out towards Newtown Court,
Okay, yes.
hotel
Okay.
behind me.
Yes.
All right. So behind the hotel over here, that's where we have the Kentucky Highway Department, right? Through some wooded area and there's the
Yes.
Kentucky Highway
Yes.
Department.
Yes.
Which indicates that there is surveillance. When you go to the Kentucky Highway Department, there are signs saying that you're under surveillance there, right?
I did not go to the Kentucky Highway Department personally.
Okay.
Part of the investigative team that we were working, went down there. I was informed that there was no video surveillance.
Okay, so you were informed, but you didn't personally go check that out yourself.
No, I did not.
The photos that the Commonwealth showed you, do you know when these photos were taken?
Those were taken approximately 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so no photos were taken of the scene back in 2014?
No, there was not.
Neither on June 15th nor on July 28th when you went back there?
No.
Let me see if I can get the orientation. So in looking at this photo, this is taken from approximately where room 115 would be, right?
That's correct.
From 115 to the end of that breezeway, sort of by that staircase there, approximately how far is that?
It's approximately 75 yards.
So there were several murders and robberies that summer, right? This was not the only case you were having to work on.
No, this isn't the only case I was having to work on.
And at some point, this kind of became an all hands on deck, everybody's working as a team on both of these cases.
We were working several cases as a team during this time.
So, once you learned about the casings, you made a phone call to Mr. Hansford to try to collect casings that he may have fired from the weapon before it was stolen.
Yes.
So you plan to quickly take a trip down to Somerset and collect those casings.
To collect the casings and to presents them.
And to do the lineups?
Yes.
So, at this point, you knew that there could possibly be a connection between the murder of Jonathan Price and this robbery that you've been assigned.
Yes.
And you knew that there were no eyewitnesses who could do an ID from the murder of Jonathan Price.
I don't know if I knew if there was any eyewitnesses other than Megan Price. I don't know the ins and outs of all that investigation, so I can.
You knew that there had not been any sort of eyewitness identification made in the Austin City shooting at that time.
Again, I don't know if there was anybody, witnesses or anybody that was talked to that made any identifications of the suspects.
But you did know that if you got an identification in your robbery case, it could be connected to the Austin City shooting.
I knew that the two were possibly connected at the time.
Okay, so at this point, you're investigating both a robbery and a murder.
I am investigating the robbery, and Detective Wolf was investigating the homicide.
I'm assuming you were coordinating with Detective Wolf and talking about possible suspects, right?
Yes, we talked as a unit, as a collective group about the different cases and such.
So you took down two lineups, one that had a picture of Jawan Malazim and one that had a picture of Pennsylvania Campbell.
Yes,
And you chose not to record any of the lineup procedures.
that's correct. I did not record it.
Did you not have a recorder?
I had a recorder that I keep.
Okay. And you chose not to use it?
I chose not to use it, and if I can explain why. I had another detective with me, Detective Schoonover. Anytime I'm showing a lineup, I typically don't, to the victim, I typically don't record it. And the reason for that is just this. When you know you're being recorded, it makes you uncomfortable if you agree with that. And the last thing I want to do is have victims of crime to be uncomfortable when I'm meeting with them in this particular situation. I want them to be as comfortable as possible with me. I didn't want them to be nervous while they were being presented lives. So that's the reason that I chose not to record these lives. Plus, I had another detective with me who was witnessing these photographic lives, and the victims themselves were filling out the paperwork for these particular lives.
But there is no recording of the events that occurred except what you chose to write down in your report.
Yes, there is. There's events that the victims can state. There's what they.
I meant, Detective, if I may, I meant recording as in, like an actual audio recording
Oh,
or
no,
writing
there's-
down a piece of paper.
There is no audio recording of these.
You did do a report in this case, one report, right? And that report is dated September 4th, right?
That's when it was entered into the Kentucky opposite systems.
So over a month after these lineups occur, your report is entered into the system.
And to explain that a little further, I dictate a lot of stuff. When I meet with victims, I'll pick the phone, we'll get on it. We talk into it, and then the secretaries of the police department will type this stuff out, and then they will email it to us. Now, you can only imagine we've got 3 secretaries, and we've got 75, 80 detectives that do a lot of this. So by the time I get it, I'll make changes to it, then I will put it in Kentucky Ops, and that's the date. Once it's approved and into the system, that's the date that will show up on the report. That's not the date that I would have. That's not the date that I would have provided it to the secretaries.
But we don't have a record of the date that you provided it to the secretaries.
No, and I don't recall when I actually did the phone. It would have been fairly quickly.
And you only reviewed the report and entered it in on September 4th, over a month after you had done these lineup procedures.
It would have been emailed to me, and once I got time, I would have reviewed it and put it into the system.
All right, so you drive down to Somerset, you gather 5 casings, not 2, and you administer the photo lineups, right?
I'm sorry.
You drive down to Somerset, you gather 5 casings, and you administer the photo lineups.
That's correct.
Let's talk about how photo lineups are created. I know you talked about that a little bit on direct, and I'd like to go through a few things. So in creating the photo lineups, this is where you're going to rely to some extent on the report provided to you by the initial responding officer in this case, right?
Yes.
Because you're going to want to get their description and make sure that A, the suspect that you're including in the report matches the description, right?
Right.
And B, that you're not putting other people in that lineup who are inconsistent with the description.
That's right.
So it's very important when you receive that report that it be as detailed as possible, include as much information from the witnesses as possible, right?
It's an important process, yes.
So you try to make sure that the suspect matches the description provided by the eyewitnesses, right?
Yes.
You put the suspect in the lineup and then you pull random photos to try to create the full six-pack, right?
I do pull random photos.
So you're not putting multiple suspects into one lineup.
Absolutely.
So the other people in the lineup are not in any way, to your knowledge, tied to the crime.
That's correct.
And how would you put together a lineup for a suspect who your witness says has a face tattoo?
My witness didn't say that he had a face tattoo.
I understand that.
Okay.
No witnesses in this case said that any of the suspects had a face tattoo.
Okay.
If a witness had said that a suspect has a face tattoo, how would you put that lineup together?
Well, in the past, I have put together lineups with like subjects that had facial tattoos.
Because that's an important identifying characteristic, right?
Yes, it is.
So if one suspect has a face tattoo and another doesn't in your lineup, that kind of makes it suggestive, right?
If you have one in the lineup that has a tattoo in the lineup and you don't, and the others don't, yeah, that would be a suggestive lineup.
So you prepared the lineup in this case for Dewan Malazan, right?
Yes, I did.
And at the time you knew he was a suspect.
We suspected him in the case.
Well, I mean, this is not a blind administration of the lineup, right? You know out of these 6 people who are displayed there who your suspect is.
Yes, I did.
You didn't prepare Mr. Canada's lineup, though, did you?
No, I did not.
So it was not you who photoshopped out his face tattoo right there, right there.
No, I did not.
And that would not have been how he would have prepared that lineup, would it?
Actually, if I can't find live characters or live persons with tattoos, then the next step would be to have to take out the tattoo, the way the line is not suggested.
Which is not what you previously testified to. You previously testified to the fact that you would try to find suspects who also had face tattoos and put them in the lineup. Is that correct?
I would, like I said a few minutes ago, I would try to find that, but if I couldn't, then I would make the effort to take out that tattoo.
You would make the effort to take out an identifying facial feature.
If we couldn't find anyone else with tattoos on the face, there's no way I could put him in a lineup with people that don't have tattoos. That would suggest that he is a suspect in the case. So we did this for the benefit of their client.
Despite, excuse me, Detective, but despite the fact that not a single witness in this case mentioned any suspect having a face tattoo.
There was no witness in this case that said anything about a tattoo.
You also presented these lineups in two different formats, right? One was simultaneous, meaning all the photos laid out together, and one was sequential. And you said that on this lineup, you chose to overlay the photos with a folder so that they would all appear to be the same size,
Yes.
essentially cropping them with the folder.
I was trying to make them all look the same. And by doing, that's the way that I was able to do that, is put the folder on them.
So you were essentially cropping them.
If you want to characterize it as cropping or overlay, such as a picture frame or something, then that's that.
Okay. Which could have also been done by cutting the photos to be the same
Well,
size.
if I had cut them, I believe it would have been too small, and then his picture would have still been oriented differently to the best meaning it would suggest.
So to you, there's a distinction between cropping by overlaying something as opposed to actually cutting the photos.
By making that folder, I'm essentially making all of them the same size without cutting them. Had I cut them, I believe, in my opinion at the time, that they would have been too small to be able to present to a.
Detective, let's go through the form that you showed to the eyewitnesses in this case. Do you have a copy of it?
I've got it, actually, one copy.
So the first thing is the form at the very top says sequential photo array for suspects, right?
Yes. Well, sequential photo array, form.
Now, the lineup that you showed of Mr. Mazza, that was not a sequential photo array, was it?
No, it was not.
It was a simultaneous one.
Yes, it was.
And then, number 3 there says, I do not know whether the person being investigated is included in this series, right?
Yes.
But you didn't know.
I didn't know, but the victims didn't know I knew. And that was how it was, like,
Okay. So you knew both for the lineup involving the picture of Mr. Mazza and the lineup involving Mr. Canada, who the suspects were.
it's,
And then, number 7 indicates the photos will be shown to you one at a time. But that was not the case for the lineup involving Mr. Mazza, was it?
and no, it was not. And I was told that this is just a six-pack.
And so we may be able to have heard that if you chosen to record this lineup,
And
right?
like I explained before, the reasons why I didn't report.
So you showed Mrs. Rutherford one of the photo lineups,
Yes,
and she was unable to identify anyone from that.
that's correct.
I've already shown this to the Commonwealth, and I'm going to ask the detective if you can look at this. There's Defense's Exhibit 2
Okay.
for identification. What is that?
This is the instructions presented to Jessica Rutherford.
And she indicates on that that she cannot identify.
Yes, she does.
Okay. Now that is a little out of order, so here, and this is, can I identify that?
This is the sequential lineup, or the lineup of the senior candidate that was presented to Mr. Federal Cancer.
And that's Defense's Exhibit 1?
Yes,
And that indicates that he could not identify anyone from that.
that's correct.
And then Defense's Exhibit 3, can you identify that?
This is the folder lineup, the six-pack that was presented to Mr. Mitchell Smith.
And he was unable to identify him.
Yes, he was unable to identify him.
And that was the lineup involving the picture of Mr. Lawson.
Yes.
So, out of the 5 lineups administered, 3 of them involved no identification, right?
That's correct.
Your Honor, I move to introduce defense exhibits 1 through 3.
Objection.
No, no.
Ordinance 1, 2, and 3 will be admitted.
When Mitchell Smith looked at the lineup involving the individual pictures, including the one where Mr. Canada's face tattoo was photoshopped out, he picked 2 possible options, right?
Yeah.
2 possible options as looking most like the man who robbed him.
That's correct.
And he indicated to you that one looked right but didn't have the right nose. The nose wasn't big enough. I don't believe it's in your report.
I don't recall if he said that.
Okay. So vaguely, but if we had the recording, we might know that he said that.
And again, I'll explain why I didn't report the violence.
And so you wouldn't know which of those 2, I think it was number 2 or number 5, he said had the right nose, while the other one didn't.
Again, I don't recall.
And to be clear, the other photos in the lineup are random people not expected to have any connection with the case at all.
That's correct.
So there was no reason to think that number 5 was connected to this case.
I'm sorry, what was that question?
There's no reason to think that number 5, Mr. Bryce, was connected to this case.
Because he was incarcerated at the time.
Yet he was one of the people that Mr. Smith picked out as potentially having robbed him.
Yes.
If you had a black suspect in a case, and your eyewitness told you that all black people look alike to him, how would you proceed with the lineup?
I probably wouldn't have shown a lot of it if they didn't mention that to me.
Okay. Because at that point, it wouldn't be a very reliable identification for him.
I don't think so.
You collected the casings that day, and they were driven directly to the KSP lab in Frankfurt, right?
Not that day.
Not that day.
They were actually booked into our evidence, and then the following day, Detective Wolf took them to KSP lab.
So it's your testimony that it didn't go that same day.
I believe they were taken on the 30th.
And at some point, a stolen phone was recovered in this case, right?
Yes.
And was that sent off for any testing?
No, it was not.
And that was never looked into evidence.
The stolen phone was actually recovered by the victim. The day after or the day of the robbery. I didn't know anything about that until a couple of days afterwards. At which point he already had it, he got it, and went back home.
And so in this case, there are no DNA results regarding the quality and robbery, right?
There's no DNA.
No fingerprint results regarding the quality and robbery.
No.
No surveillance video from the hotel.
No.
No photos of the room itself immediately after the robbery.
No.
So nothing to document whether mattresses were overturned and drawers pulled out, things like that.
No.
No backpacks taken into evidence to test, anything like that.
No. And that's not something that we would normally do, is test a backpack or swab a mattress in a hotel room, or even fingerprint. The officers were out there, they would have been able to determine what items could be collected for evidence, and there wasn't.
And for that information, you're relying on both the report and the judgment of the responding officer, right?
I'm relying on that, but I'm also relying on the training that I know he's received and that I have received too as a part of being a patrol officer. He knows what to look for. That's part of our training as a police officer. You get that in the academy, you get that from experience from working the street. So Detective Officer Harris would have been able to determine those things.
Because you do want to collect as much identifying information as you can in order to make sure you have the right suspect.
You do if it's there, but in this case, it wasn't.
Well, in this case, nothing was tested.
There was nothing to test.
And no stolen items were ever recovered from Mr. Mazza's person, were they?
No,
From his house?
no.
The item recovered was the stolen Springfield XES 45.
That's correct.
And that was recovered from an individual named Antonio Bry on September 4th of 2014.
I believe that is correct, yes.
And this is your case that you're investigating, Detective. Was it recovered from Antonio Bry?
Yes, it was.
And you didn't speak with Mr. Bry?
No, I did not.
You didn't collect his DNA?
I did not.
And you didn't put him in any photo lineups, did you?
I did not.
So the only stolen item recovered, other than that cell phone, was the gun, right?
Yes,
In the possession of Antonio Bry.
that's correct.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so you said that this has been robbery homicide for about 7 years. How long have you been with this?
16.
Okay, so you went to the academy and training after training, I'm sure.
I've had a lot of training.
So, and during that training, I guess probably the first part of it was you take some notes, everything in reports. You said you dictate.
I did take a lot of this.
Okay, so, and conversations you've had with witnesses, what you dictate that?
Yes,
That you have them on?
yes,
Okay. And you already said it's important to do it fresh in time, right after it happens?
yes.
But on your report from September 4th, talk about talking with the victims, you don't get dates when you call them. So, testify your day, you called them a few times prior to going up on the 29th, but you didn't put that in the report.
Actually, if you look at the report, you can see in the report on the 30th when I talked to Mr. Hansford and collected the serial number. And in addition to that, I keep an Excel spreadsheet where I keep all of my cases in order with the case numbers, the dates, the times that they were assigned, the case number, the victim's name, the location of the incident, the type of incident it was, when I contacted them, when I first made contact, because I keep that in that Excel spreadsheet for all of my cases. And if there is a suspect in the case, if there was a suspect arrested in the case, coordinate all that through my Excel spreadsheet, handwritten notes.
But you don't put that in your report?
Typically, just when I first make contact with someone, unless they provide something pertinent at that time, I typically don't put it in the report. I keep a running spreadsheet to keep up with when I make contact with people and keep up with my cases.
So unless we have that spreadsheet, we don't know when we talk to anybody or what they said.
That's correct. Yes.
This is the original before it had been cropped. Altered.
That's the original, yes.
And you testified today that you don't know how that happened? I think it happened.
No, I didn't testify to that today.
You said you didn't prepare it, so.
Oh, I did not prepare that particular lineup. I know how it was taken out.
Well, it was removed, obviously. but,
Yes.
And did you didn't look at the lineup before you gave it to them to see that it had been removed?
I'm sorry, what was the question? I'm not following.
You didn't look at the pictures before you showed them to the victim to see that it had been removed?
I'm sure I looked at the pictures. I actually numbered the pictures to make sure that they were all numbered differently. But I don't recall the tattoo or the tattoo being taken out.
So you didn't notice it, or you would approve that it was taken out?
At that particular time, I would have approved for it to be taken out. And I've explained why. Because we would not want it to be suggested in the lineup.
Because none of the victims had said anything about it.
It wasn't taken out for that purpose because they didn't say anything about it. It was taken out because we didn't want to be suggested. And we couldn't find 5 other fillers with facial tattoos. So I can't put him in a lineup with a tattoo on his face and 5 other people without. That's suggestive.
And yet you couldn't have covered that portion of everybody's face.
There's several different options. You can cover it, you can take it out, you can leave it in.
Get evidence introduced. And the recorders that you guys are equipped with, they're pretty small, they can fit in your pocket, right?
Yes, yeah.
And you don't have to tell these people that they're being recorded.
Typically, if they're in your pocket, all you hear is the shirt or something scratching. So, I mean, you need to have them out where everybody's clearly speaking and it can be picked up.
It's possible to turn it on in your pocket and have it recorded.
I don't believe it would, it's possible, but I don't believe it would be a good recording of anything.
Just one minute. That's all I have to.
Yes, Judge. Particular person, just have a couple of kind of follow-up questions from what you said. Number one, you were asked, I think, by the defense about a blinded lineup. What does that mean? What is that?
That means a blinded lineup would be that I don't know which photos I'm handing them, or I don't know who the suspects are in this particular case.
Okay. And in this case, you were the lead detective?
Yes, I was.
And I think you indicated that there were additional people that had come to the unit to assist because of the lot
Yes, they
that was
had.
going on?
Yes.
Okay. At this point in time, during the course of that investigation, would members of the robbery homicide unit and those other team members coming up, would they have known about or been aware of that there was some connection between these two defendants?
Yes, they would have.
And I know you weren't the lead in the Austin City homicide, but were you aware generally of some investigative steps that were taken by the unit or the group that was working on that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And was there communication made to Lexington police officers about, at some point, about these two suspects also?
I'm sorry.
Was there some communication made to other members of the Lexington Police Department regarding these two suspects?
Yes, there was.
Okay. And so, would it have been difficult to have someone who did not know these individuals to present the lineup to you?
It would have been very difficult.
And you indicated that you have shown hundreds of products in the course of your career.
Yes.
Okay. You always show them blindly?
No, I do not.
Okay. Is there a particular manner in which you show them?
I've shown them in six packs. I've shown them sequentially. And I have shown them blindly.
And so all of those ways are ways that you have done and
Yes.
shown lineups to individuals.
That is correct.
And again, there was this conversation about sequential versus simultaneous six-pack versus a sequential lineup. Are both procedures done by the Lexington Police Department?
Yes, they are.
You were also asked about a comment, if someone said that all black people look alike, you would show them a lineup. Do you have any context of what that means?
Not really, no.
Okay, so that's just kind of thrown at you out of context, right?
Yes.
All right. In your time with the police department, you've been there 16 years, in your time with the police department, have you come across, in dealing with individuals, that sometimes people will say things they don't mean?
I have, yes.
Okay. And say things out of anger after a stressful situation?
Yes.
Okay. So when that happens, does that mean you don't tell them a lineup?
We agree.
Detective Upchurch, I was asking you about the comment that was made, or the question that was asked by the defense with respect to the all black people look alike comment. And so I think my question was, do you have any idea what you're talking about, or what that's in reference to? Okay. If someone had made that comment, does that mean that you will foreclose showing them a lineup?
I have never had to deal with that, so I don't know. I don't know. I think I could still show them a lineup, but I don't know.
Okay. Would it help if you knew the context? I'm not telling you I'm going to, I'm just saying, in determining whether to show somebody a lineup under that circumstance?
Yes.
Would it help to know what the context is? Would you need to know that?
Yes, I would.
And then you were asked a lot about the report and the dates in the report and various things like that, and you indicated that you have a spreadsheet where you kind of keep your notes about your personal interactions and things like that. If someone were to ask you about that, so for example, the defense called you up and wanted to talk to you about what you did, is that something you would share with them? If you talk to them about what you did? You were also then asked about whether there were certain things done there at the hotel. And one of them was a question about whether or not there was photographs taken in the hotel room or there during the course of that robbery or after that robbery. Would photographs of the inside of the hotel room, knowing what you know, would that play into your investigation at this point? Would that play into your investigation in any way?
No, it would not.
Why not?
Because there's no evidence to be obtained from photos. We went out there, we know the location of the hotel room, or the hotel and the hotel room. Simply something turned over in a hotel room just doesn't help with me in my investigation in locating suspects involved in it.
Okay. You were also asked about prints being collected from the hotel room.
Right.
Would that have helped you at all in this investigation?
If prints were collected,
Attempting to collect fingerprints from that hotel room. Maybe I'm saying it correctly. They were asking whether or not fingerprints were attempted to be lifted out of that hotel room.
right.
Okay. Tell us about attempting to locate fingerprints out of a hotel room.
Well, first of all, it's a multi-purpose room. Multiple people are in and out of that room, to include your cleaning staff. People leave their fingerprints. However, Most of the time, when you look for fingerprints, you look for them on a smooth surface, such as glass, a mirror, something like that. Rough surfaces like this, which countertops and your dresser drawers and things like that you typically find in a hotel room, we wouldn't be able to get fingerprints off of those items.
And what about DNA off of a hotel mattress?
Well, it'd be a petri dish, I would think, so I don't think we could get DNA from the mattress.
You were also asked about whether there was any fingerprints or DNA collected off of the victim's phone. Are you aware of how his phone was collected?
I am.
Okay. Tell us what you know about how it was collected.
It was on the side of the road. Someone picked it up the following day. It was out in the elements. Someone else picked it up, provided to the people at the Speedway, and the victim went by and picked it up. So there would be no evidence to be able to obtain from that particular phone.
Okay. Is that something that you would expect to find fingerprints on?
If at the actual time that they stole it and we dropped it right there and we collected it that night, we might get a fingerprint on the screen. But after it's collected, someone else has touched it, the victim's got it back and put it in their pocket, no, we're not going to get any fingerprints off of that phone.
Okay. And what about with respect to DNA?
No DNA. It was out in the elements. Multiple people touched it. Touch DNA is very hard to get off of anything anyway. So, no, I don't believe I know we would have done anything like that.
And you were asked about the victim's cell phone and then you were asked about the backpack. If victim's items are, found, collected, or something along those lines, and a victim wants that back, is there a procedure in which to do that?
A procedure to get those items back to them.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, we would release them to the victim.
Release them to who?
The victim.
Release them to the victim?
Yes.
Okay, so those aren't necessary things that you will keep in evidence?
No.
Not at all. Nothing further.
I have some. Detective, just to be clear, it's your testimony here today that your department learned about the casing being connected to Springfield XCS at the end of June 2014, not the end of July 2014, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And the phone that was recovered, as well as no efforts to test it in terms of swabbing it or fingerprints, which you've explained, no efforts were made to try to look at what phone calls had been made from it, right?
No.
Or to see if there was a way to track the GPS on the phone.
No.
And at no point in your review of the case or your gathering of information from Ms. Rutherford, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Hansford, did you learn of drawers being opened in a hotel room, a mattress being flipped, items like a backpack being gone through?
Only thing I recall is about a mattress being flipped. As far as the drawers and things like that, I was never informed of all that information. The responding officers were there and what have you, but I didn't.
Okay. And that's not something you included in your report, is it?
No, it's not.
And it's not something that's been audio recorded, is it?
No, and I've explained why.
Any follow-up?
No, Your Honor.
Let us get this found on speed.
I would ask if you remain on call, please.
So, I'm going to ask that you remain on call
Yes, ma'am.
in case you need any more additional testimony.
Yes, ma'am.
For now, you just stay.
Thank you.
Counsel, first, please. All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time we are going to break for lunch. During this recess, please do not discuss this she did not read or listen to movies